Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think I will ever quite forget the look in my father's eyes when I came back from a gap year and announced to him that I will not be studying law, as we had originally decided, but instead that I would like to do a degree in dance at UCT, majoring in ballet. But not for the reasons that you may suspect right now. I'll never forget it. He sat there on the couch next to my mom on the farm, as comfortable as I was in my relationship with him at that stage, and as assured as I have always been of his support. Society had already primed me to know that what I'm asking of my over 6 foot, big burly Afrikaans, rugby-loving dad was a fantastic leap. And what did I get from him? I got love and unconditional support. But I was one of the lucky ones, I believe. So I'm standing in front of you today as a normal guy, a son, a dancer, and an educator. And I want to use this opportunity to shine the looking glass, if you will, on the boys in our schools and the men in our societies. A lot of psychologists who specifically focus on child psychology, couples therapy, and a lot of what they said they were seeing was exactly what we were seeing at school. I found it fascinating. 4 things I'd like to highlight for you. The first thing, there's a prevalence of absent or uninvolved fathers. And it creates a void. There's a scarcity, if you'll believe me, of masculine energy right now. There's a very powerful quote by Douglas Gillette that says, "A man needs other men, especially older men, to bless him, to honor him, to encourage him, to point out his mistakes and to raise his status." The thing is, if boys don't get this, they'll go looking for it themselves. We see that boys who grow up without rubbing shoulders with older men try to form it for themselves. And I say rubbing shoulders actually quite literally. You can see it especially in grade 8 and 9. As they change from class to class, these kids will walk past you and sort of rub against your shoulder and acknowledge it with a cheeky grin, or they'll run up to you, eager to shake your hand, or even just a fist bump. They crave the energy. From grade 10, 11, and 12, it becomes more serious. They start looking for it harder amongst their peers. Yeah? Then it becomes something they look for in their sports heroes, their pop idols, the media. And then it often becomes a problem, because it leads right into point number 2. This reaching towards an ideal of phony masculinity. Underfathered boys transition into phony men. But I want to explain to you what I mean when I say that. Boys and young men who don't know the world of older men make it up for themselves based on externals, right? Then they try to prove or act out that they're manly. And I see variations on this theme daily at school. You see them from grade 10, 11, and 12 onwards walking around with short-sleeved school shirts. And they actually physically tuck the sleeve in here, yeah? And then they sort of staple it discreetly so that it spans over their biceps and lats and back. And these guys walk around there, tight. Or what they do is they buy their shorts too small. So it literally spans over their legs and shows off their ginormous quadriceps. I look at this and I see it and I laugh at it because it's so transparent. It's so easy to look through. And it seems so uncomfortable in your own skin. I can show you how they walk as well. The head goes back on the neck and the eyebrows lift. But it's not a frown. It's an aloof lift, if you will. And everything happens very slowly. And it's really interesting because you can watch the boys on the playground. And the ones who are comfortable in themselves, You'll hear the one shouting at the other one, "Hey, Joe," and he'll turn around and say, "Hey, man." And then you'll hear the other one shouting, "Yo, Jason." And he'll go, "Oh, where, bro?" But it has to happen slowly. You laugh, ladies and gentlemen, but you perpetuate this. We all do. Our society does. We adore machismo and masculine power. We comment on it all the time. We do it as fathers, male teachers, women in society. This needs to stop because we're propagating a false, phony perception of masculinity. And by the way, before somebody tells me that this is a sports versus arts thing again, which it's not, you see the same thing happening with so-called dance moms the world over. And it has the same detrimental effect on female psyche, but that's another talk for another day, I think. This leads into point number 3, repression. It was so funny. Every single therapist that I spoke to, ladies and gents, said this to me. Couples therapy, especially, this came up. Yeah, they said that men are not really acknowledging their full emotional spectrum, well, because it doesn't fit in with the perception of what masculinity entails or is supposed to be like. And we know that cowboys don't cry, I'll give you that, but do cowboys have feelings then? I've often wondered. Because I think they do, and these feelings don't go away. I'll tell you where they go. They go into a cauldron where they bubble for years and years as unexpressed, unprocessed human experience. It's not healthy. Our boys are not taught to be themselves, and our boys turn into men who can't express themselves. And that leads right into the next point. You can see it's a chain reaction from the first point right down to the fourth. Struggles to connect. Our relationships suffer horrendously. It's so interesting. There's a lot being done right now on connection and neurobiology. The field of neuroscience has grown tremendously. It's exploded in the past 20 years, and I want to urge you to go and read up on Dan Siegel. Linda Graham did the most brilliant paper called The Neuroscience of Attachment. Go and look for it, where she actually describes to you on a chemical level what happens in your brain when you connect to another human being, when you feel loved and accepted, and the opposite. And then it becomes quite apparent where I'm going with this in educational context. It's the most ironic thing for me. Our greatest gift as human beings is to connect to each other. We are at our best, our brains function at its best when we are in a state of connectedness. Why then are we raising compulsive competitors and not excellent connectors? Something is wrong here. So the question that remains is, what does this have to do with dance, right? I'm about to get there. The tipping point for me was when I was sitting in my office one day and I was grading a paper. It was during a break. And I heard the studio door go open. Remember, this is a public school. It's noisy. Door opens. And a boy walks in that I know has a horrible history of abuse, domestic abuse from his father. And he switches on, without seeing me, the saddest, most heartbreaking waltz. And I'm watching him. He takes a broomstick and he waltzes. And I remember watching this with a lump in my throat and then getting up and walking towards him and saying to him, "Hey, why aren't you, outside enjoying your break? Something wrong? Can I help you?" And he looked at me like I was nuts. He said, smile like this, and he said, "Sir, I'm enjoying my break. Thank you very much." I left him. I found it strange. And then a couple of days later, there were more boys. Big ones, small ones, cool ones, uncool ones, budding intellectuals at 14, chess players, rugby players. There was a shot put champion. It was weird. Then came the girls. And they were right across the social spectra. They were all there, the plastics and the You know, the nerdy ones and the cool ones. And you know what the interesting thing was? I watched these kids being themselves during break time. Even if they went back to their roles during school time, the moment they walked into that studio, it disappeared. And I realized, whoa, something's happening here, bigger than me. What is it? People are going to start asking me. I need to know what to tell them. So I started looking at what we were doing, and the first thing that I looked at was the 5 pillars. We teach them to release your monkey, yeah? Be yourself, don't conform, laugh at yourself, because if you can't do it somewhere in your life, somebody else is going to do it for you. It's the first thing we teach them. Second thing, we never leave a dancer behind. We don't judge each other. That's a golden rule in the studio. We take care of each other. It doesn't matter who you are. The third point, it's about more than just the steps in here. Yeah? You have to understand that you're not just here to learn dance steps, because that opens the door for us to teach them about life. The fourth thing, the 3 P's of partnership: praise, push, and protect. We use this mainly with our competitive ballroom and Latin couples. And we say to them, your dance partnership is a partnership simulation. It simulates a platonic or a professional or a romantic partnership for later in your life. So let's get the basics right now. And then lastly, we say to them, live like you dance like you live. It's the more difficult one, but this is basically dance as metaphor for life. So the same way you approach the step you're not getting right, that's how you're going to look at your maths homework this afternoon. Don't tell me you're not, I know you are. Yeah. So the 5 pillars, they work. I'm happy with them, but this wasn't it. This wasn't the X factor. I realized the following. The studio is a neutral zone, ladies and gentlemen. It's a no judgment zone. It's as easy as that. It's not me, it's not the studio, it's not even dance. That's it. Be yourself, follow your heart, speak your truth. That's it. That's why they flourish there. And there's a second thing. Dance requires all of you. It does not disavow any part of you because it's not masculine. In fact, it's not always comfortable, but it requires of you to delve and to develop those parts of you. Yeah? Peel back your layers and express yourself, and express all of yourself. And this was a great realization for me. It took the load right off my shoulders, because I realized this is actually a recipe that anybody in any activity anywhere in the world could use to teach. It's bigger than dance. This is not a talk about dance, turns out. 2, it works because it doesn't try to make men, but it allows men to find themselves and grow themselves and adjust their ideas while they're doing it, which I think is important. So I'm going to start concluding. The men in our society, ladies and gentlemen, seriously need to start taking off their masculinity masks, and soon. It has to happen now. This connects with all the other brilliant TED Talks that I've seen on masculinity. Go and watch them if you need to. This, for me, is an urgent matter. We need to get real. We need to learn to balance. We need to stop searching for our soulmate and start searching for our souls. Mates, to use the meme. Seriously. And we need to learn to dance again. Don't really care how, but just do it, all right? It's important. As educators and as coaches and as fathers and as mothers, we need to return to teaching balance as our central focus, regardless of the activity that we are teaching. And this is the crux of my talk today. Connection and relationship instead of posturing and phony masculinity. Ladies and gentlemen, I see some awesome father-son relationships in the area where I work. But I still see the boy coming to school with the strangulation marks around his neck from last night, where his father tried to throttle him because he comes to dance. And let me tell you, he keeps on coming. And I still sit in the counseling sessions with the boy. He's 7 feet tall, he's 15 years old, who breaks down and says to his dad, I just feel like you don't love me. And his dad says to him, when you start abiding my rules, I will love you. Connection. Repression. In any case, I read an awesome poem a while ago by Jewel Matheson. I hope I'm pronouncing her surname correctly. It speaks to women. It's called We Have Come to Be Danced. I loved it. I watched it daily. I read it again and again. It inspired me tremendously, to the point where I had to write something for boys. All right? I hope that you will forgive me that I followed in her footsteps so closely. I'm going to read it for you because it's pretty fresh, off the press this morning, 5 o'clock. I end with this. We have come to dance. Not the He-Man, yes I can, wham bam, thank you bam dance, but the suck the marrow out of life dance. The standing in the fire of my own humanity dance. The stretch your arms out and fall forward into the vulnerable void dance. We've come to dance, boys. Not the highfalutin, rootin', tootin', Rolls-Royce and Armani dance. Big bucks, army trucks, take them out there sitting ducks dance. But to take my hand, my brother man, and let me help you through the muck and the blood and the bone and the sinew of our shared existence. We've come to dance. Not the phony strut, the nasty rut, but the catch in my throat when I see her dance. Surrender to the unknown, trembling tips of my fingers dance. The holding hands in public and returning of her wings dance. The shake of the shame and the guilt and the anger, skinny dipping in the midnight pools of grace dance. We've come to dance. Not the what if, woulda, coulda, shoulda dance, but the rising of the phoenix from the ashes of the mundane, the bellow from the cliffs over the valleys where our doubts and fears reside. The Father am I? Yes, you are, you are, you are. Enough dance. The swelling of the chest with the breath of closure dance. We've come to dance where the people gather, in the light of the fire of you all, to peel the skin off our eyes and yours, to leap, to howl, to stamp, to prowl, to pray in the light of the tribe. But we have come. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.